Hello and welcome. We hear it all the time, right? That yoga is this amazing tool for stress. But does it actually work? Today, we're going to push past the anecdotes and dive into what the science really has to say. You know the feeling, the constant notifications from your phone, the deadlines at work, the general weight of it all. It's no secret that so many of us are feeling overwhelmed. A lot of people turn to yoga for relief, but can this ancient practice really be a science-backed solution for our modern stress? That's the exact question we're going to explore. We're going to unpack 5 key scientific studies that have put yoga to the test in all sorts of real-world situations, from the crazy high stakes of a hospital to the daily grind of your 9 to 5. To get started, let's take a big step back. We're not just going to look at one single study. Instead, we're starting with a study of other studies. This gives us a really powerful bird's eye view of all the research out there. And this is what makes these findings so potent. We're looking at a 2024 systematic review and meta-analysis from Schleinzer and his colleagues. Now, you can think of a meta-analysis as kind of a scientific super study. It gathers all the high-quality trials on a topic, in this case, yoga for stressed-out adults, and combines all their data to see if a bigger pattern emerges. This gives us a much more reliable answer than any one study could on its own. And we're talking about a lot of people here. This wasn't just a handful of participants. The review pulled together the results from 13 different randomized controlled trials, which included, all told, over 1,000 stressed adults from countries like Germany, Sweden, and the United States. That large, diverse sample really gives these findings some serious weight. So you might be wondering, what kind of yoga are we even talking about? Well, it wasn't just one specific style. The programs varied quite a bit, lasting anywhere from 5 to 16 weeks. People might have practiced just once a week or up to 5 times. But here's the key. They all shared the same core ingredients. You had the physical postures known as asana, the breathing techniques called pranayama, and some form of meditation or dhyana. And here is the main result. When the researchers compared the people doing yoga to the control groups, so people on a wait list or just getting no treatment at all, the difference was clear. The yoga groups felt a statistically significant, moderate reduction in their stress levels. For those of you who love the numbers, the standardized mean difference was negative 0.69, which is basically a solid, meaningful effect. But, and this is where it gets super interesting, when they put yoga up against other active things, like a structured exercise plan or other relaxation programs, the result was a tie, a dead heat. Now, what does that tell us? It tells us that yoga is absolutely effective, but it's not the only thing that works. The real key seems to be finding an active practice that you'll actually stick with. Let's widen the lens again to university students in general. For so many people, especially university students, life can be incredibly demanding. You've got the pressure from academics, finances, social stuff. It's a lot. And managing that stress isn't just a nice idea. It's absolutely essential for well-being and, just getting through it all. To find out, we're going to dive into a pretty recent study. This one was published in 2024 in the journal Frontiers in Public Health, and the researchers set out to answer that exact question. Okay, so what kind of study are we talking about here? This was a randomized controlled trial, which is really the gold standard when it comes to research. It involved 129 university students from both Spain and Colombia. They were then randomly split into 2 groups, one that did yoga and a control group that didn't. The whole program spanned a total of 12 weeks. And during that time, students attended 24 different sessions, with each and every class lasting for a full 60 minutes. And these weren't just random yoga classes, they were really well structured. Each one started with breathing techniques to center everyone, then moved into some warm-ups, followed by the main hatha yoga postures, and always ended with a really crucial cool-down and relaxation period. The findings were pretty striking. After the 12 weeks were up, the group that practiced yoga showed a significant decrease in how much stress they felt. Meanwhile, the control group, the ones who didn't do yoga, their stress levels just stayed consistently high. And you can really see the change right here. The researchers used something called the perceived stress scale. Before the program, the yoga group's average score was 25.8. Afterwards, it dropped all the way down to 22.8. That's a clear, measurable reduction that shows the real-world impact of the practice.
Okay, so yoga can definitely help with the day-to-day grind. We've got that. But what happens when you turn up the heat, like way up? How does yoga perform in some of the most high-pressure jobs you can even imagine?
To figure that out, scientists went straight to the front lines of stress. I'm talking about people who live and breathe this stuff every single day. Nurses and medical students. These are people dealing with constant exhaustion, emotional burnout, and literally life or death decisions. So, in a 2025 systematic review, a team led by ARIA focused specifically on this group, nursing professionals and students. They pulled together 14 different studies with almost 1,000 people from places like India, Turkey, the US, and more. And the yoga they looked at was pretty varied, everything from traditional styles to even something called laughter yoga. But the goal was always the same. Could it help with the intense mental strain of the job? And the result? It was super clear. Out of the studies that measured stress, a whopping 9 out of 11 found that yoga significantly reduced it. That's huge! So our second piece of the puzzle is this. The stress-reducing effect of yoga isn't just for everyday stress. It seems to hold up even in one of the most chronically stressful jobs out there. This brings us to a 2025 study led by Chuhan and a team in Hungary. They decided to test a yoga program on one of the most consistently stressed out populations you can find, medical students. The pressure they're under is just relentless, which makes them a perfect group to study for something like this. This study included 220 medical students, and their average age was about 21. It's really worth noting here, just like in the big meta-analysis, that the participants were overwhelmingly female, almost 90%. This is a common pattern in yoga research, and we'll circle back to why that matters in a little bit. The students took part in a really structured 10-week program they called Goodbye Stress with Yoga. It was a pretty manageable commitment too, just one 90-minute session each week. And every session was comprehensive, including a warm-up, the physical postures, dedicated breathing exercises, and meditation. So what happened after the 10 weeks were up? The results were really powerful. Using validated clinical scales, the researchers found significant drops, not just in stress, but also in the students' reported levels of anxiety and depression. We're not talking about a small change here. It was a major, statistically significant improvement across all three of these key areas. And the benefits didn't even stop there. The students also reported that their overall quality of life got better and, so importantly, their quality of sleep improved. They also showed better emotional regulation, which means they felt more able to manage their emotional responses, a totally vital skill in their demanding future careers. So the big takeaway from this study is that even a relatively small, consistent investment of time, just 90 minutes a week, can produce these really significant, wide-ranging benefits for your mental health, even for people who are under intense chronic pressure. All right, that's some super compelling evidence. But let's be realistic for a second. Who has the time or the money to get to a fancy yoga studio every day? I sure don't. Which leads to a really important question for, the rest of us. Does doing yoga at home from a screen actually count? So, in 2023, Fonsecar and their team in the US ran this really clever trial. They found 86 working adults who were, feeling stressed out and weren't super active. Then they gave them an 8-week yoga program that was 100% remote, just live and recorded videos. They wanted to see if this could actually make a real difference. And their results are just, wow. Look at this. You can see it so clearly. The group that didn't do yoga, their stress levels pretty much stayed the same. But the yoga group? Look at that drop. A really significant decrease in both stress and anxiety. And this gives us our fifth and maybe most practical insight of all. You don't need a fancy studio. Remote yoga can absolutely work. The researchers' conclusion really drives this point home. They found the remote program worked, it was safe, and this part is key, people actually liked doing it. And that makes all the difference, right? It means it's a realistic option for real, busy people just trying to squeeze a little self-care into their crazy schedules. But hold on, that's not even the coolest part. As the researchers were crunching the numbers, they found something else. A kind of surprise bonus that was a total game changer. And here it is. It turns out yoga didn't just help them feel better, it actually helped them think better. We're talking about real, measurable improvements in things like attention, memory, and the ability to switch between tasks. So get this, yoga doesn't just calm your mind, it might actually make it sharper. Okay, so we've seen that yoga appears to work, both in the general population and in a high-stress group. But now let's get to the really fascinating part. How does it work? what is actually happening inside our bodies and our brains when we practice yoga? The science points to three main pathways. First, yoga seems to regulate what's called the HPA axis. That's our central stress response system, and that leads to lower levels of cortisol. Second, as we touched on, it balances the nervous system. The deep breathing and mindful movement shift us out of that fight or flight mode and into the parasympathetic rest and digest state. And finally, the practice appears to literally strengthen the neural networks in our brain that are responsible for emotional regulation, making us better equipped to handle life's challenges. The evidence we've seen is really promising, but it's so important to look at the limitations of the research to have a truly balanced view. The researchers themselves highlight several of these challenges. A lot of studies compare yoga to doing nothing, but fewer compare it to another active treatment like, say, stretching or walking. That would help us isolate what's unique to yoga. As we've seen, studies are heavily skewed towards women, so we know less about the effects on men. Most studies only look at short-term effects, not whether the benefits last for years. And of course, you can't blind someone. They know they're doing yoga, so things like the placebo effect can't be totally ruled out.
So, given those limitations, what do researchers need to do next to build a more complete picture of yoga's role in stress management? Scientists are calling for more large-scale, rigorously designed trials. And crucially, these trials need to compare yoga against other active things to see what, if anything, is unique about it. We also need studies that follow people for much longer, a year, 5 years, to understand if the effects last. And finally, research just needs to include more diverse groups of people to make sure the findings are truly universal. And I think this quote from one of the studies we looked at just nails it. The scientific consensus is pretty clear. Yoga appears to be a safe and promising tool to support mental health in people who are already under significant stress. It's low risk, and it's got a whole lot of promise. The question isn't really, does yoga work anymore? The evidence says it does. The real question is for you, what practice are you going to choose to manage your stress?